Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Office Hours. We've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every single day since March 25th, 2020. Alexander Knight at Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what do we have?
First question coming in this morning is from Hazmat Gajar in Cape Town. Is there a solution to give slide control to our remote talent without screen sharing in Zoom? We have the slide computer as an input into our ATEM. Prefer not to go share screen to permit remote control and per Zoom solution.
Ronnie Hofsoy is going to help you out with this. Ronnie?
Yeah, I've used something like this a few times, mostly during COVID, but I guess it's still a valid choice. It's actually just a software where you have internet as a transport, and you can even have a free trial. So Internet Clicker is the one I suggest to use. There are other solutions as well. I've used not the United States clicker, but the European, one with the yellow and the red and green button. They also have a software that you can connect up to this if you have that hardware on-prem. And that way you just need a Windows machine to run that software on-prem, and then you can connect anything to that remotely. I'll see if I put a link in the chat to that software, and that software, if I remember, is also free, but of course you then need to have the hardware on-prem.
Great. Thank you for the answer. And Hasmuk, we miss you here on the panel. Next question.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto, Canada is asking, I have a Blackmagic Design Pocket Cinema 6K first gen that when I try to connect to the BMD camera app on my Mac shows up, but the settings icon is grayed out. Do I need to set something in the camera to allow it to make changes and update firmware?
Jason Bache is going to help you out first here.
Okay, so I've owned the 6K and the 6K Pro. We were trying to parse this question. Just so you know, Craig, not every update is going to update your camera. And in fact, I think for quite a while now that the 6K first gen hasn't been updated. So I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to change. It can't hurt to reset the camera settings and try it on a different Mac. If you're using the iOS version of the camera app, the one you used for control for Bluetooth, that wouldn't be doing anything.
Nigel, can you help?
Yeah, so I don't have my Blackmagic anymore, but when I did, I would do two distinct things. One is update by downloading the Blackmagic app to my Mac, connecting it by USB to the camera. As Jason said, invariably, once you're a couple of years out from that camera, most of the updates are not for that camera. They're for the newer cameras, and if you read the release notes, it will tell you that. And then I controlled the camera using, I think the app was called Settings Plus. I didn't think much to the Blackmagic iPhone app, but the Settings Plus run on my Mac, even though it was an iPhone app. And I don't believe you can update the settings from that. But my typical process was every few months I'd go check see if the camera app had been updated, download it to my Mac, and then do it that way.
And Craig Kadoki has noted a couple of things here. Camera's been reset, tried on different computers, and it is connected to a Mac over USB. I'm not sure whether those things are relevant, but I will say that that first generation, I had some problems eventually. Mine worked solid as a rock for 3.5 years, and then suddenly things started getting a little squirrely with it. So if it's an original one and it's a little old, just read some of the boards and see if there's something about people who have run into this problem before. And it is possible for things to just stop working over the course of time. So good luck with it. Next question.
This is a QR code question from Hector Rodriguez in Fairfax, Virginia. Is the Samsung T5 Portable SSD still the best external hard drive, and T7 the one to avoid?
I think it's a pretty deep question. Alexander Knight, what do you think? How do you parse
T5
this?
is ancient. Stop trying to source that. You're not going to find it. It's not worth it. T7, yes, that's the problematic one. The T9 is the current one, and it is much, much better, more reliable, and a lot faster. And the T9 is now being added to Blackmagic's compatibility list. So if you buy a T9, I think there are specific sizes that they recommend. I think 1 or 2 terabyte models, and I bought one that's working fine for ISO recording on a Blackmagic. So I would look at the T9 drives.
Ronnie Hossoy?
Yeah, and besides the technical speed inside the unit you are deciding to purchase, temperature is always a demon that we try to avoid. So have all these taken care of temperature-wise. Keep them as cold as possible. Even have them on a cooling flat surface or something. Don't put them inside a rack where there are a lot of equipment already heating up everything. So keep them outside and in an airy environment is my suggestion.
Yeah, I also remember going through this. I mean, for the T5s worked really solid for me for years, starting maybe 4 or 5 years ago, whenever they first became very popular. And then when the T7s came out, originally there was a problem, but I think there was some kind of incompatibility with how they'd structured the drive. And as I recall, after a few months of everybody screaming about it on the internet, people stopped talking about it, which I assume means that they must have done maybe some firmware update or something like that. The T5s are now discontinued. If you're buying them, you're buying them in the aftermarket. So I think it's time to move past that, unless you have one and a system and it's all working fine, in which case, don't mess with it. Next question.
This one is another QR code question coming from Patrick Heineman in Longview, Texas. We're thinking of connecting an Avantis to presonus 64S via AVB/Dante bridge. Is this advisable? We have both mixers currently.
Alexander Knight's going to help you out here.
I've never tried that. Just so people know, we're talking about 2 digital consoles here. Avantis is a pretty high-end Allen and Heath digital console. And then we have the PreSonus Studio Live Series 3 console, which of course work on AVB networking, like Patrick is talking about. I don't see why not. I mean, I see people convert one network protocol to another. So, for example, people convert Dante into MADI all the time, and vice versa, back and forth. A lot of higher end consoles like the Digico stuff use MADI, and I know people that have a lot of outboard gear and they have to convert into MADI, or they got some stuff that's Dante and then they have to convert to MADI to get it back into the console. So people do this all the time, and there are solution boxes out there like RME makes. I don't think RME makes an AVB converter box, but I do know they make other good quality converter boxes as well, and I'm sure PreSonus has their own conversion hardware. I just haven't tested it, so I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Don't forget that we run on your questions, so you can ask your questions. You can chat about them, because we have a kind of a live parallel thing going in our chat every day, and it's really fascinating to see all the people chatting there about some of the questions that we have. That happens in Mukana, our Q&A system. If you want to get into it, go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email within a day or two, and once you've done that, you can vote on, and discuss the questions. And voting is important, because the questions that get the most votes are the ones that get to the top of the list. We get to them faster and spend more time on them. So that's how the system works. Next question.
Nigel Dessau in Orlando is asking, we went to see the new Superman movie at an IMAX yesterday. One thing I did notice was during a fast pan, the film looked like it was out of focus. Was that just me, or something about the projection system?
Ooh, this will be an interesting discussion. Nigel, you spend a lot of time on theater, home theater, and everything else. What's your impression of what you saw?
So we were at the IMAX and IMAX in Orlando, and one of the sort of old-fashioned ones where you have to walk up the steps to get near the top, but I still think it's probably a digital projector. I'm not a great quality of sound or video or movie. In fact, the movie's not bad. It's about 7 out of 10. But I did notice whenever there were fast pans, everything seemed to go out of focus, and I didn't know whether that was something they were trying to do, or just whatever the projection rate of the camera or the projector couldn't keep up with what I was watching. So I wondered if any smarter person than me, of which there are many here, would know the answer.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, it could be just algorithmic motion blur, because I imagine it's not shot in the real city of Metropolis, was it? So I would imagine that a lot of the exteriors are all CGI plates. So they put the motion blur in there. Also, they add motion blur to fast pans, or fast pans normally become blurred to avoid stuttering. Because the IMAX is such a large screen, if it refreshes and there's a whole new image during a quick pan, it'll start to picket fence. You'll start to see artifacts on a fast pan between the exposure shutters. I'm sure it's a digital shutter, so there's less of that. But that may be what you're seeing is they put that in there to prevent stuttering on or picket fencing on fast pans. So it's an artificial motion blur that's added.
I will say that
it wasn't the original. It wasn't a 15 perf 70. It was probably Limax, or as they call it. Yeah.
James Gunn, that director, is a pretty good student of film from the past, and I wonder if he looked back at the original Superman movies and wanted to quote a little bit of that. I understand from reading it. I haven't seen it. I think I'm going to go a couple of days this week and see a couple of different formats, because this is now the movie in all the formats. You can see it in 40X, RDX, ScreenX, the weird wraparound thing. And I'm interested in looking at a film in some of those formats just to compare how they affect me. But we used to use a technique on the analog camera days called a swish pan, where you'd pan so quickly, and if you slowed that down, it was a lovely kind of dreamy effect. I'm not sure how well that's ever going to translate to digital. I think Courtney explained a lot of the reasons for that. So I'm wondering if it's a combination of the aesthetic choice that James Gunn made as the director to do those things, which would have been kind of traditional back in the original Superman movie days as a transition, and just where we are now with stuff. Nigel, you want to discuss it more?
Yeah, no, Courtney's answer made sense to me. I was just going to say to you, you're a brave man to sit through that multiple times.
I know. Listen, I've been trying to do it. I got a movie pass for my birthday back on the 2nd of July, and it was go see any movie you want as much as you want in this particular theater chain. And this is a good theater chain, so they have all the formats. What annoyed me, I was going to originally do it with F1. But F1 in those formats only lasted like 6 days, and then they were gone. And then they put in Jurassic Park, and I have no interest in the new Jurassic Park movie, so that was the one that got all of these extra screen things. Now, because Superman is really new, it's the only movie out there that is on all these formats at a theater. And I have an intellectual curiosity in seeing. I spent a whole 15 minutes yesterday trying to think, okay, what should I go see first? Should I do the IMAX? Should I do any 3D? Should I do RPX? Should I do ScreenX? What's the right order? Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to see if there was a different effect, kind of, if what I would recommend to see a movie in based on what these formats can do. So I may take one for the team and watch this movie 4 times, not because I'm fascinated with the movie. It's actually in 6 different formats, if you consider that IMAX 3D and IMAX are 2 different ones. How far do I want to go? How much time do I want to waste? But I've got a week before my next big project starts, so I may do that as an indulgence. Next question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Davinci Resolve's lens node is like a lens mashup, and it lets you emulate different lenses for bokeh, etc. Do you think this is realistic, and what are the use cases?
Jason Bass will help you out here. Jason?
Sure, it's realistic. It's been done quite some time in still photography, and I guess this is just the extension of it for video. It's doable, it's neat, and at least for still frames it works, so I don't see why it can't properly be done for video. That said, I've never done it, and neither has anyone else, hence this get early access. It's brand new.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they derive this. I mean, bokeh, the whole point of blurred backgrounds and what the shapes are of things like specular highlights, people who are really concerned about photography and videography are very concerned with those things for aesthetic reasons. The question for me is that if you use this stuff, will that have a significant impact on your rendering times and things like that later as it tries to crunch through all these soft edge shadows and things like that? We'll see. Courtney, you had some more information?
Well, besides focus, they can also mess with the linearity of the image in the a lens. So you could add barrel distortion to make it look like a wide-angle lens if it wasn't shot on a wide-angle lens, if it was shot on a normal lens. Or you could add, distortion, chromatic distortion along the edges to make it look like a cheap lens, to make it look like somebody shot it with a home video camera or something. They use those overlays, those type of lens effects that can be added, or just change the focus at the outer edges to give it a little more dreamy look, to make it look, the old effect of putting Vaseline on the lens was something that was done in the olden days before we had digital lens nodes.
Let's get a set of prime lenses and then dumb them down so they look like camcorder lenses. It's an odd, maybe it'll be an aesthetic choice. Who knows? Next question.
Peg Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri, USA is asking, with the increased frequency of severe weather events, do you research historical weather data before working on location?
Courtney Gooden.
Well, historical weather, I get the almanac out that was printed in 1926. And look and see what the weather's going to be like at the location that we're shooting. Now, I mean, you can look at the annual rainfall for that particular situation to kind of figure out, if you're a gambling man, what the percentage is, but it's best to look at until recently, look at the NOAA long-range forecast for the area which you're shooting and the date on which you're shooting, and they will have a much better a chance of predicting what the weather's going to be like using just the 7-day or the 8-day, the 7-day or the 10-day forecast to see what the weather's going to be like at your particular location. They're not 100% accurate, but they're more accurate than looking at the almanac to look at historical, rainfall amounts, because those books are all out of date these days, and what used to be, accurate history is no longer.
Nigel DeSalle.
Yeah, I wondered whether there was increased adverse weather effects or the increased reporting of adverse weather, and whether that's some of it as well. The reality I discovered from sitting next to the head of forecasting for the US Air Force many years ago on an airplane, I said to him, when are we going to get to the point where we can accurately predict 7 days out? And he said, never. So I think what you have to do is think about where you're going and what the weather patterns are like that. So if you've lived in Central Texas and it says it's going to rain at 2:23, it tends to rain at 2:23. If you live in Central Florida and it says it's going to rain at 2:23, it's any time between 1:30 and 5 o'clock. So some of this will be dependent on where you're looking and what the weather patterns are like. And so I'd encourage you to probably study more what weather is like in that area, less of extreme, but what you're more likely to get. I mean, in Orlando, 5 p.m. every day, it rains. I don't need a weather forecast to know that. I can look out the window. So it's really, I think, as much about where you're going as extreme weather stuff.
Courtney Gooden, you want to come back in on this?
Well, there also are, because of the patterns of jet stream vary, throughout the seasons. You can look at the frequency of severe weather events. There's hurricane season. Yeah, as you know, living in South Florida, you people that are here on the panel, or North Florida, there is hurricane season where it's a much more likelihood that you're going to get a severe weather in the form of a hurricane. And of course, there's Tornado Alley that runs up the central part of the United States, and there are in other countries, there are certain tornado alleys because of the shape of the country and the position of the jet stream at certain times of the year. They tend to produce more severe weather events. So, your chances are greater during, the spring or early summer for certain tornadoes, and during the hurricane season. I don't know when hurricane season is because I live in Los Angeles. We don't have weather here, so.
Well, you have weather. It's just typically the same, except when it's really hot. Anyway, don't forget, we have extra shows. We have new shows. We have different shows in the evenings. And in fact, since today is Monday, that means Extra Hours is tonight. That really works for those of you who maybe this show's timing isn't perfect every day. Tonight, I got a special guest for Extra Hours is Paul Richards of PTZ Optics. So if you have questions about pan tilt head stuff, you will have an expert this evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. On Thursday, We also have the workshops going on and the rundown with David Paskin. He hopes a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech. So in the evenings, there are some things for you to do if you are an Office Hours fan, and we appreciate all of your support. Next question.
Brian in Washington, D.C. is asking, will Apple ever introduce velocity or pressure sensitivity to their device screens to take advantage of musical apps that, say, have a keyboard or other velocity-sensitive parameter controls?
Interesting question. Jason Bates, what do you think?
Well, Brian, they did. It was the iPhone 10, and I believe it was called 3D Touch. The way that it worked is it was measuring the flexibility of the screen against the backlight, and that has largely been replaced by haptic touch. And the entire thing, I believe, is still always, and since the 10, been open to developers. So the answer is that the future is now.
Well, there you go. I don't recall ever using that, but I don't do much music kind of thing. But I do in a lot of the touch screens things on my iPad that I do find myself using slider controls, I think, more, just like that form factor better. Next question.
This one's from Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. For a 2-camera shoot, discuss cross-shooting, inserts in splinter unit, and wide establishing shots.
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here. Courtney?
Yeah, unfortunately, almost every shoot these days is a 2-camera or more shoot because, cameras are cheaper than they used to be. And they think it's an economy, but sometimes it isn't. Typically in a 2-camera shoot, they will try and save setup time by shooting, because when you set up a shot in a dramatic film, you usually light it and stage it to shoot it from a specific direction. And then if you have to shoot reverses, that's another set of shots, which you turn it around and light the background in the other direction and light the characters correctly for the other direction. And shoot the reverses for the people that are speaking face-to-face and so on. These days, a lot of times they will do the dreaded wide and tight when they're shooting in one direction, where one camera will shoot a wide establishing shot for the whole take, for the whole scene, and the others will be picking off medium shots over the shoulders and close-ups, which is the sound mixer's nightmare, because you cannot put the boom microphone in an advantageous place to get the good sound that's going to give you the best sound for the majority of the take. Usually they will only stay, after editing, they will only stay on that wide establishing shot for just a second or two at the beginning to give you your bearings. And then they go into medium shots and close-ups for the remainder of a dramatic scene. And typically there's a thing called the line, which you try not to cross editorially, so that when you're shooting a close-up, you shoot from this side of the line and this side of the line, but you never cross over to the other side of the line, because it changes the screen direction of where everybody is looking to, and it confuses the viewer as to which direction the other actor is in relationship to the camera. So their eye line has to be to the correct side of the line when shooting multiple cameras. These days, to solve the sound issue, everybody's wired. Of course, it gives you that close-up perspective on the wide shot, which nobody likes. It's better to have camera perspective. But what they can do these days with the magic of AI and just the ability to composite, a lot of times they'll let the boom go ahead and intrude into the shot on the wide shot. They'll take a plate of the empty frame before they start, or they'll pull the boom out at the beginning of the take, so the camera will capture, a segment of the scene just 5 seconds or so before the slate. Without the boom in there, then the boom will dip in to where it's going to be for the shot, and then they can easily replace that area where the boom is painted out, basically in post, and that way you get the good quality sound from the boom microphone. Without having to worry about compromising the entire scene, because they're going to hold that wide shot for 2 minutes and over a 2-minute scene, and they're only going to use 4 seconds of it after the edit.
Yeah, I think from the time, I think it was Desi Arnaz who did 3 cameras originally in television on the I Love Lucy show. And to me, if I'm going to drag 2 cameras onto a shoot, I'll probably drag a third, and I'll try to get them matched, because there's something sensible about having a wide master and then close-ups of 2 people in a dialogue situation. That's kind of where they were traditionally designed for. And I agree with Courtney that sometimes those stack things, it's just you're trying to get around editing problems later. It's a reasonable technique, but we're all now getting tired of kind of the traditional look of things, and everybody is trying to figure out how to do something new and unusual. I can't tell you the number of shots I've seen lately where they're shooting up a nose or down from some building next door or something, just to try to make it visually less typical. Courtney, you had some other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just going to point out, since we transitioned from film to digital, it's been less of a financial burden to shoot multiple camera because you're not burning film through 3 cameras at the same time. I used to work on a sitcom with famous sitcom directors and James Burrows. I worked on, I think, Will and Grace. And when he would direct, we would be shooting 5 cameras, film cameras, Panavision cameras, 5 of them.
The labs loved you guys.
2,000-foot loads, big magazines. But they would roll the cameras, and if somebody flubbed a line or even if the scene wasn't working, he had he had enough control at the studio. He would just let the cameras roll. The writers would come down from the audience. They would write a new line. Cameras are still rolling. While they're writing a new line, 5 35-millimeter cameras are still rolling. They write the new line. The actors would get it down, and they'd go back, reset the scene, and come in and do the new line. No cuts. Because it would take so long to synchronize, do slates on each of the 5 cameras every time they rolled or cut to resynchronize them, that he just saved the time. And there was another commercial director, David Steinberg, who did the same thing. He would come in and give notes to the actor. Cameras keep rolling. So he has a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff of him directing the actors with the cameras still rolling. But these days, digital cameras, hard drive space is cheap. They don't have to worry about sending it to the lab, processing it, printing it, syncing it up. All that is already done for them. So it saves them a lot of time. So they are free to shoot multiple cameras and let them roll as long as they want.
As an editor, it's sometimes the nightmare, though, to get, oh, my God, I've got so much to go through here.
The other thing, we didn't address Splinter unit, so if we have time, I'll just mention that briefly. Splinter unit is a separate crew that shoots other parts of the episode or TV show or a theatrical picture that doesn't involve the same cast. Or if it does involve the same cast, they move them from the Splinter crew to the main crew. So it's a separate crew so that you can double up on shooting different locations at the same time. Rarely does a Splinter crew shoot on the same stage as the main crew, but it's a whole separate crew to shoot pickups, inserts, and small scenes, because the main director usually has to be with one or the other. And there's usually a second unit director who will direct the second unit or Splinter crew so that they can... this is done mainly on TV shows where they have they have to deliver, in a week or so. So they're under a very accelerated post-production schedule. So they got to make sure they can fit the whole episode into a week of shooting.
Next question.
This one is a QR code question from Kern in Maine. I'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on using DJI Pocket 3 as a webcam.
Interesting approach. Ronnie Hossoy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see no reason why. There are lots of examples of doing that. I'm having 2 DJI Action 4, which I normally use to capture other stuff, but they are easily connected to, let's say, a Mac Mini or MacBook Pro or whatever that has the USB connection, and I can have those as sources going into, for instance, Mimo Live or whatever I would choose. I actually have it on my desktop here as well, and I can easily, if I had the setup before, I could easily just use that as an input source for showing my desk or whatever I would choose to do. And the thing that is really cool is that you can also match these with the DJI wireless microphones. And when you just add this as a source, you will have the wireless microphone coming in as a sound source as well. So it's actually something I am planning to look a little bit deeper into, if it's possible to make a show floor system just based on the MacBook Pro running Mimo Live and using these types of USB cameras as webcams going into the whole production. Thus far, the workshops we have or workshops we have with the Mimo Live gang at Boeing's. Together with Alexander, has given me some new input how to do this, and it's really interesting to see how we can use kind of cheaper cameras to be sources for pretty advanced productions. The one thing I would say could be a limiting factor of usage is that these cameras are seen as action cameras and have kind of a wide field of view, which is sometimes not working perfectly for the situation you are in. I would love if my Action 4 cameras, for instance, had the possibility to zoom. And I haven't tested this with the Osmo Pocket. And I think that Osmo Pocket might be able to zoom using the interface on the camera handle and have a little bit smaller field of view, so be able to zoom in. This is something we do all the time using phones, etc. So I would love to see that functionality also in the action cameras.
Nigel Dessau.
Yeah, I think it depends on many things. I mean, it depends on, are you trying to push out 1080? Are you trying to have a high quality picture? Are you trying to make this a permanent situation? Is this a mobile situation? So I think there are lots of conditions. So I think the answer is yes, it works. I often, when I travel, use my Link 360 as my web camera. And it's a fabulous camera. I can zoom in. The picture looks great. May not look as great as my Sony, but it works well in a pinch. And so I think the answer is it's horses for courses here. I think if you're trying to do a podcast or you're trying to do something for YouTube and you want it in 1080 or even 4K, if you just want a simple zoom, these things work differently. But typically the bigger the sensor, the better the picture.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add to this, I agree with what everybody has said so far. To me, a camera is in one of two classes. Either it's a camera that sits somewhere and does its job. I started at the beginning, so the webcam that I'm speaking to you now on, I'm not going to touch, adjust, or do anything else to that for the course of the hour I'm sitting here presenting. And a field camera for me is a camera that I'm actively operating in all cases. So I wouldn't generally, my list for features for a camera that I'm going to be going into the field with is pretty different than my list of features for a camera that sits on my desk and just takes a shot of my face every day. That said, we have so many choices. It's great to see all the variety we have out there. Let's go to our next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. Project Indigo is Adobe's computational photography app. Just what is computational photography and how would you use it?
Jason Bass is going to start us off with some definitions. Jason?
Well, if you're doing it right, you're not actually using it at all. Computational photography is the process by which a whole bunch of information goes into a computer and renders an image usually on device. So in this case, the easy version of this, and every single time Apple does a new iPhone demo, they will show you this series of frames that are simultaneously occurring the minute you turn your camera on, and one is showing depth map, and one is showing wide, and one is showing close, and then they show you an HDR layer, which is by itself kind of a misnomer. This is a better representation of it. You've got the stuff on the top to get this, small piece of the underexposed that would otherwise be in shadow, all the way down to the darkest piece, and the whole thing gets mixed together. Then, this would be a panoramic shift, which is also computational. It's image stitching. And, there you have it. Computational photography in a nutshell, Paul.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, computational photography is done. It can only be done with electronic cameras because is a way to compensate these days for an image sensor that may take, a certain level of light to get a good noise-free image. And the problem is the digital image sensors are transistors, and they vary from transistor to transistor. Between one pixel and the next pixel, there's a little bit of variation. And so when you have very little light, you have to increase the gain or increase the exposure time of those pixels. And when you do that, the differences between those pixels show up as noise. And so to compensate for this, computational photography will take a series of shorter exposures, even at a tighter f-stop, and sum them together and average them together mathematically so that they will arrive at a nice smooth image. And that averaging averages out the noise between the short exposure times or the low light exposures. So it's a way to increase the smoothness, remove the noise from what would normally be a noisy picture if you're shooting in a low light condition where they have to crank up the gain. Those transistors are the capture time of those pixel elements to create your picture. And as Jason was also saying, it's used to stitch things together, and you can also use it for adjusting your HDR levels so that you can get your detail in the shadows while also excluding an area of the frame from that computation so that you can have different levels of exposure within a single frame. So it does things like that. So it's kind of burst photography. It will take several frames and average them out mathematically. And it also integrates with Lightroom. They are working on, it's currently only for iOS, but they are working on an Android version, so don't give up Android users out there. The version is coming for you.
For me, as someone who has been doing photography for a lot of years, it has been transformative for me in terms of switching my mind from being a technician when I shoot photos, which I still have to do. You never get away from having to understand all the physics of capturing light through a lens. But when computational photography is working well, you get released to think about other things. For me, it's the aesthetic thing. I'm about to go back and shoot Comic-Con again for probably my 9th year in a row. I started out doing it with a DSLR. Now I'm doing it exclusively with my phone because the phone makes it so much easier. 90% of my effort is the interaction with the people that I'm shooting. And I don't want to think about too much technical detail because you get these moments that just happen. And if you're not ready, if your camera isn't ready, if you've got a setting wrong and you're fiddling with focus or something like that, you miss these moments. I'll just toss up one Comic-Con picture that was totally a mistake. I should never have happened. I saw this young lady walking through the con. We're on a big concrete apron, and she was dressed as Green Goddess, so she had this very organic kind of natural outfit on. And I looked around and said, this is a terrible location. And there was one straggly little palm tree over across the thing. And so I had her walk over with me, and she had to adjust something. I think she got something in her contact. And I just found this moment. I adore this picture for that reason. It was really an act of will to get that picture because nothing natural was happening. And it was a matter of working with the person, understanding the location and thinking not about the camera and what my settings were going to be, but just try to make a photo where there wasn't one that really worked. And so that's why I'm a big fan of computational photography. The fact that you can now capture a lot of raw values, a lot of digital numbers to make a good photo out of it, and it gets you away from having to think so much about the technology, and you just end up thinking, how can I make a better picture? How can I make a better picture? How can I think about the things that will end up making a better picture? And they're not often the technology anymore. So I'm a big fan of computational photography. Next question.
This one is from Paul Vall, who's in Austin, Texas. For your Sony or other camera, what is a NATO ring and how do you use it?
Jason Beish?
Okay, I had to look this one up because I'm like, all right, I know what a NATO rail is. What the heck is a NATO ring? And it feels to me like a really, really bad idea. Okay, here we go. So apparently Simond has launched the NATO ring, and what it is a bunch of NATO rails on a ring at the end of a lens, which if you've ever used an expensive lens and camera, kind of feels like a really great way to make your lens front weighted, which is the worst way to have a lens. Words kind of escape me. Unless I'm completely wrong about this. Wow, what a bad idea.
Ronnie Hofsoy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jason hit the nail there. Adding something like this and just from the top of my head, I'm thinking, what type of equipment could I I connect to a NATO rail, and this ring is just basically a ring with NATO rails. And I was thinking of handles or even scopes, maybe a red dot sight, or there is so much equipment that you can connect to a NATO rail, but having that in front of my lens would be kind of unimaginable. I can't imagine what else I would use this for. I'm pretty sure this could open up for vendors like SmallRig, etc., to start developing stuff that you need to connect to the NATO ring. But I think this is kind of a product that is made up and maybe a creation from the AI world. I wouldn't say that I would buy this product.
Courtney Gooden.
I think one application they invented these for is there's a lot of gimbals on the market now for, replacing a steady cam. So anytime you have to have a smaller camera that's mounted in a gimbal and you need to mount something in the front like a matte box or would be mounted on a matte box, this gives you the ability to mount something in front of the lens or above the lens and still be on the gimbal without interfering with the balance. You have to adjust the balance of the camera, but still be able to mount it on a gimbal or a drone or some other hothead type remote location where the camera is free floating and can't be, you can't base any support information, any support rods underneath the base of the camera to support a conventional matte box or lens accessory box in front. So it lets you still free float the camera with something in front of the lens.
And the chat does not like this idea either. Just why? Why do you use it? Don't. How do you use it? Don't. Bad idea. Jason's right. Not the greatest idea. On and on. Anyway, if you have questions you want to put into the show queue, you can always do it through the regular Mukana system, or you can just type askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Type that into your web browser. That's the official way to get it in there. I think I have the QR code up here that I can pop up in the lower corner of the screen. That'll get you to the same place. If you take a picture of that or do a freeze frame and then just zoom into that and shoot it with your phone, it'll get you into the askofficehours.global quick queue. And that's kind of the fastest way to get your questions into the show. And as always, the show goes as long as we have your questions. And when we run out of questions, we stop the show, or at the top of the hour, whichever comes first. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. What do you think of the first robotic cameraman?
We've been seeing this kind of thing for a long time. Jason Bache, do you have?
I was about to say, I'm trying to remember which show was it where the boss was going around on an iPad. It was basically just a guy going around. So okay, where do you find these? Look at this. This is like, what a trip. Is it really robotic if you need a phone app for it? I don't know. But yeah, it looks like it is just generally doing following and. Wow. I mean, yep. Looks like a quite capable tripod. It's not clear to me exactly what the phone app is used for. Maybe that's just the stop you're about to go downstairs. I don't know.
What's the processor? Is there something sophisticatedly doing avoidance with IR or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
like it's a Kickstarter, I believe that's fully under. We'll figure it out.
Oh, God, I hope there are people down there in green screen clothing with little strings pulling it around to make the video for it. I just hope so. Courtney, you had some thoughts about this?
It's just a tripod with a motorized wheel on it that you can program, the direction the wheel turns and the pattern that it follows. You have an app that you can draw the pattern so that you go from point A to point B and do a nice curve in between, etc. Of course, then you got to pay for an Optimus One to move the cables out of the way to move. So there's that problem with
what was that Sony robot dog called? Maybe he could
Ibo,
he can gap your cables for that.
Yeah, it can go nudge the cables out of the way, or
That's right.
You can have a little team with brooms that go and sweep the ground to make sure it's not going to run into
ex-curling wizards.
That's going to ruin your entire shot. I don't know how great this is. I guess for a low low budget shoot and you can't afford somebody to push the camera, then for those that want to do tracking camera shots and they're basically an influencer who doesn't have a crew at all, and usually you're holding the camera at arm's length, this takes it off your arm and lets you travel along with it without hiring somebody to push it around.
This just in, spiky camera tires. Do you see these? Look at that. Oh, yep.
Spiky.
Yep.
Oh, look at that.
Yep. See, they've got studded tires, which is also a new innovation that nobody else has
like
ever
those
thought
plastic
of.
shower loofahs.
Really smooth.
Great. Ronnie Hofsoy.
I know we were supposed to be kind of responsible in this broadcast, but I can't see anything or anywhere I would use a product like this. I would go with a rented cameraman any day of the week. That said, we should be looking at Kickstarters more, because there are needs for new developments and new thoughts, and of course some of the ideas will be shut down. But unless we try and unless we start and support these ideas around the globe, I think it will be a less interesting world also in our part of the tech community. But this product, I can't see. Just imagine it during the Olympics, following swimmers at the. Oh no, it's a nightmare. I would never do that.
You know, I say that, and in kindness, this is someone's Kickstarter, so it's probably their dream to do this. And, you know, that's the start of the creativity that does bring innovation to our business. So I'm not going to, we laugh and tease about these things a little bit, but you never know. I mean, I had people laugh at me when I started using digital 8 cameras in the very, very early parts of my, this isn't a real camera. You can't do that, kid. And I made some horrible but money-making little videos for people, and that started me on my career. So I'm not going to poo-poo it too heavily. Nigel, you want to come back in?
I was just going to say there's a separate show we could do on Kickstarters I have funded, and whether the products either turned up or actually did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
And I am greatly burned by Kickstarters.
Yeah, there's some places like Small Rig and other people who seem to do a lot of Kickstarters, or at least did in the early parts of their business, and they turned into significant companies who did a lot of business and helped us out with innovative products later on. So, it's a coin flip sometimes whether it's going to be good or not. Let's go to the next question.
Alva, who's in Austin, Texas. What is quantum dot OLED?
Nigel, do you want to dive into this deep physics mess?
No. I will let someone much smarter than me explain to you, Paul, what quantum dot is, although I think you could probably Google it or ChatGPT, and it'll explain it to you. So I'll give you the simple man's answer. It is all the benefits of OLED without all the disadvantages. So we used to, and there's a third one as well. The nice thing about OLED is that it's nice colors, better angles, deeper blacks, contrast ratio, all of that stuff. The downside is people fear burn-in. The quantum dot reduces the burn-in. The reality is, I think this is a way to sell you a very expensive television. And if you have the perfect environment, a blackout room, a home theater or something, you might find this, you might be able to see the difference. But this is the way to, this is the top end of, I think the Sony and the Samsung line have these. And maybe one day it'll come to the rest of us. But at the moment, it's the way to charge you $4,000 for a TV you could buy for $1,000.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, quantum dot OLED, it kind of marries two technologies together. There are quantum dot, I have a QLCD Samsung screen right here. QLED they call it, which actually uses LCD to shutter each pixel. In other words, an LCD shutter that controls the amount of light that gets from the mini LED backlights through the colored filter for each pixel, the red, green, and blue filters for each pixel. So there's a separate LCD. But in quantum dot OLED, there's an actual organic LED behind each pixel, but instead they used to do OLEDs, the original OLEDs, they had a different type of doping on the LED that organic LED. So there was a blue OLED, a green OLED, and a red OLED. There were three separate LEDs that would emit the light that comes out. So you wouldn't have a backlight. The OLED puts the emitter right at the surface of the viewing plane. So you don't have angle offsets that create viewing angles that are limited and change color as you change the angle, which happens with LCD shutters. So the OLEDs gives you the ability to have in-plane switching or in-plane emission. But the quantum dot OLEDs, the problem they ran into with the original OLEDs was that the different colored dopings on the individual LEDs aged at different rates. So the blue didn't last as long as the red or the green. So over time, your TV set would shift colors, and burn-in was also a problem because they aged at different rates between the three different colors of LED emitters. So what they went to is a single type emitter that emitted a blue or ultraviolet, near ultraviolet, or partially ultraviolet emitter, just a single LED color. And so the LED emitters are all the same color, so they all age at the same rate. Then they put a filter in front, which is a quantum dot filter, which uses tiny, tiny little dots, little spheres of different sizes, and depending upon the size of the sphere, a different wavelength of light is allowed to pass. So quantum dot filters is a way of producing those red, green, and blue filters. In this case, they don't filter the blue as much to get that blue or ultraviolet light to a color for each individual pixel, red, green, and blue pixel. So it uses a quantum dot as the filter and a single blue or near or partially violet LED backlight for each pixel. So that's what a quantum dot OLED is.
Don't forget, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes all this possible. Or you can do a simple donation if you'd like to. We are a 501c3, so it is tax deductible in almost all cases. That's officehours.global/donate is the link into there if you'd like to help us do what we do. Let's sneak on to our last question, I believe.
Last one's from Guy Cocker in Seattle, Washington. Who is the special guest on Extra Hours tonight?
Well, we were talking about that at the beginning of the show. Up at the top of things, it's going to be Paul Richards of Pan Tilt Zoom Optics. So many people are using PTZ cameras now for two things that I found. Number one, to replace camera operators on location, so you don't have to have somebody standing there for a limited motion camera that you don't need to do certain things with. But the other thing that a lot of people are using them for is this kind of Zoom appearance and stuff like that. They're just out there a lot. Everybody has pan tilt zooms, and there's all sorts of tiers of them. They go from extremely expensive, high-quality cameras down to simple little things. So if you want to learn about them, Paul Richards will be the guy you want to ask questions of, and that happens at 7 p.m. tonight, right here where the show normally happens. Ronnie Hofsoy, you have some thoughts? Oh, so I said 5 p.m., 6 p.m., excuse me. I just want to make sure I get that right. 6 p.m. Go ahead, Ronnie.
So it's so nice to have those type of people coming in our shows, or child shows, or parent shows, or sibling shows. And the one thing I will be looking at, even if it's really, really late here in Europe, I will be watching this show live, to have the possibility to connect and ask the really, really difficult questions that sometimes are forgotten. And the thing that is on Extra Hours with these type of specialists is they go really deep, and they always try to talk about what's in the future for these type of products. And we being on the edge of this in our economy and in our tech, it's really interesting to see how they are thinking and what functionalities they are focusing on, and what is the options we can have in these type of cameras in the future. And of course, look at the cameras they have on the market today. That's really cool. And the ability to ask questions to these specialists is also a really, really cool opportunity.
Yeah, and I think I undersold that a little bit. It's actually remote production is the overall topic tonight. So they're going to talk about a lot of things having to do with that. And there's a note in the chat here. Carl Asmussen showed a cool Canon pen tilt zoom with AI in a recent show, and they discussed that. So you can see that these kind of cameras, which are huge for remote broadcasting, Remy and the rest of this, they're just a lot of development. And if you're interested in this, if you do remote broadcasting or things like that and want to learn the latest, this would be an excellent evening to tune in. That's 6 p.m. Pacific time right here on Office Hours. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much to everybody, all of our constituencies who make this show absolutely possible every day. We could not do this without you, and that includes our producers, those of you who put questions in the question queue, generated the discussions that we had here through your work. We appreciate you very much. For the panelists who show up here every day and freely offer their expertise, really help a lot of people learn a lot about this industry by just answering questions. So thank you, panelists, and our amazing back-end crew, the unsung heroes of doing this. You know, we're getting up there towards our 2000th show. It'll happen in a few months, I think. But for each and every day, there's been an assembly of people from all around the world who made this show possible, and our back-end crew, I think, is second to none. They're really extraordinarily talented. It's been my good fortune to meet and become friends with some of them, and it's enriched my life immeasurably. So thank you, back-end crew. It's an amazing group that we operate here every single day. It's time for the Tlock Traversal. What that is, if you're brand new to the show, is that we always figure out if you hadn't been able to sit at home in the comfort of your viewing environment or at work or wherever you are, you would have had to travel 23,000 miles to reach the people who gave you these questions and generated this discussion today. That's 37,000 kilometers, 183 million bananas for scale. That's going to take care of today. Don't forget, extra hours tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow.
The NATO ring. That was
the NATO ring.
Amazing. I'm like, wow. Could you pay me to come up with a worst physical thing? Like, is this a joke?
Put your Canon lens repair facility on speed dial because you hang 13 pounds of stuff.
Would you like to make your camera more front heavy?
Yeah.
You got to put a wireless mic receiver on it, and it's a DSLR. Where are you going to put it?
That's right. I keep my body pack of transceivers right on the edge of my lens. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, and I think they should have used that RoboCam to figure out the level on the camera when they shot their behind-the-scenes stuff.
Somebody's going to strap an Anton Bauer battery on that ring. I guarantee you.
Mickey says, good luck on the next lens change. Can you imagine trying to change the lens?
Not enough when you have to put a teleprompter in front of it.
And about the quantum dots, this was my take on the quantum dots.
Honey, where are my
good call,
keys? I need my hex keys.
It's
Dark Side of the Moon.